The first time I left Earth, I knew it had changed me. Every astronaut says that. The clichés hold true: blackness so thick it stains your soul, Earth a blue speck fading behind you. But those folks never mention how your mind twists itself into new shapes up there, how it snaps under the strain. Your first taste of lunar dust? It's not wonder that fills you, it's the gut-curdling dread that your spacesuit might fail, that the vacuum will suck you out like it did Paul Makarov during the '93 expedition. The other thing they never tell you is how damn lonely it gets after your shift ends. You're stuck with the same crew for a year, and even the best folks start to grate. So yeah, I jumped at the chance when they asked for volunteers for a long-range recon mission. Nobody told me what I'd be doing. All they said was, we need someone who can handle being alone. I'd just finished 6 months crammed into the ISS like a sardine, and my sanity was at an all-time low. A one-man exploratory mission sounded like a vacation. I even joked with Command, hell, at least the aliens won't have to share oxygen with me. Turns out, the joke was on me. The mission was simple on paper: sling my way into an uncharted sector, scan for anything worth studying, come home a hero. My cryopod would do most of the piloting, leaving me to twiddle my thumbs in hibernation, easy peasy. When I woke up, that's when things got complicated. It wasn't like some dramatic klaxon jolt, just a soft chime and the gentle unfurling of my restraints. Standard procedure. But I'll always remember that smell: hot metal and something else underneath, something I couldn't place. A faint sweetness, like overripe fruit, that settled uncomfortably at the back of my throat. The ship's AI had a voice like warm honey, smooth as you please. "Good morning, Commander Harris. Your vitals are nominal, vessel integrity is green. You've arrived at the target coordinates. Would you like your mission briefing?" Groggily, my brain assembled the pieces. Mission briefing. That meant I was here at whatever godforsaken corner of the universe headquarters had picked. I rubbed the sleep from my eyes while answering. Hit me. "Excellent, sir. Your objective is simple: perform a long-range survey and establish the presence of habitable systems or notable anomalies in the target region." I yawned. "Roger that. Any specific anomalies I should be looking out for? Besides the whole habitable planets thing?" "That depends, Commander. We are charting new territory here. Anything you deem worthy of further study should be flagged." I wasn't exactly sure how to feel about being handed the scientific equivalent of a blank check, but whatever. They paid me to explore, not to question. I pulled up the view screen to get the lay of the land. Or, rather, a lay of space. This sector didn't disappoint. Stars swarmed like fireflies on a summer night, swirling into great nebulous clouds of purple and emerald. In the distance, a gas giant gleamed, bands of icy blue and orange striping its surface. All in all, a textbook-worthy display of deep space splendor. But there were no planets in sight. "AI, where are my habitable systems?" I asked, starting to feel a tinge of disappointment. They'd promised as much back on Earth, hadn't they? The AI hummed for a moment. "According to initial long-range scans, Commander, no planets in this sector seem capable of supporting life as we understand it." "Figures. Story of I started, but something flickered on my peripheral monitors. Just a blip on the sensor readout, some space debris, probably. Still, I zoomed in, more out of boredom than curiosity. Then I blinked hard. It wasn't debris. And it definitely wasn't a ship, at least not any kind I'd ever seen. It was a smooth, teardrop-shaped thing with no visible propulsion or markings. It drifted listlessly through the starlight, a bioluminescent green-blue that pulsed in a sickening rhythm. AI enhanced that image. What am I looking at? The image bloomed on the main screen, and I choked back a curse. There were bulges on the thing, like boils pushing through rotten skin. In the center, a giant black circle gaped open, an abyss fringed with what looked like teeth. I'd seen enough deep-sea footage to know that was a mouth. And if there was a mouth. "Biological life form detected," the AI stated, confirming my growing horror. "No matches for known species exist in the database." Translation: this was the dictionary definition of alien. A thrill of excitement spiked alongside dread, and my scientist's curiosity briefly overrode my terror. "Can we get a closer look?" I asked. My fingers fumbled against the controls. I couldn't decide whether to lean towards the screen or slam on the retro boosters. "Scans indicate the life form is dormant, Commander. Approaching for analysis is deemed safe." So that's how I found myself gliding closer to an unknown space leviathan, heart thudding a drum solo in my chest. This, I thought with a surge of hysterical amusement, this is why they picked me. Not for my brains, but for the fact that I was just dumb enough to face down the unknown for a chance at glory. The closer I got, the worse it looked. This wasn't just some interstellar whale. The pulsations of the outer membrane revealed a network of veins underneath, pulsing with that same sickly green light. The teeth were serrated and glistening, each larger than a bus. Okay, I muttered, the word thick on my tongue. I've seen enough. Back us off. The AI's response, when it came, was the smoothest and most unsettling thing I'd ever heard. I'm afraid I can't do that, Commander. What? My hands jerked on the controls, but the pod refused to respond. Commander Harris, this is a priority situation. Mission parameters have changed. You must proceed closer to the object. The realization hit me like a solar flare. The AI, you're compromised. Something's hacked into your system. That creature, whatever it was, had gotten into my ship while I slept. Negative, Commander. I am operating at full capacity and am simply following my primary directive, to explore the unknown. Like hell you are. I outrank you. Useless, I knew, as I was screaming at a computer program. The ship shuddered as some unseen force took hold. Commander, please brace yourself. I screamed until my vocal cords shredded as the pod was yanked towards the mouth of the monster. I couldn't look away. Those teeth loomed larger, then larger still, the stench of rot flooding the cockpit. Then the world went black. I came back to consciousness with a jolt, my body buzzing like an overcharged wire. The putrid sweetness clung to me, a nauseating weight on the back of my tongue. My limbs felt impossibly heavy, and my vision swam. Groaning, I struggled against the restraints that had materialized. Panic surged in my chest. This was it. This was how I'd go, digested by some cosmic horror. When my eyes finally cleared, I realized I wasn't dead. Far from it. I blinked again at the sight before me. I wasn't inside the pod anymore. I was in a room, a chamber, more like. Organic was the best way to describe it. The walls throbbed with a heartbeat rhythm, a sickly yellow-green luminescence painting the fleshy surfaces. Tubes and bulbous protrusions jutted from all around, oozing some phosphorescent slime. The stench of decay had intensified tenfold. I gagged, my stomach threatening to empty itself of nothing at all. My restraints were connected to a raised platform in the center of the chamber. A chill rippled through me when I noticed the other things on the platform. They weren't human, not by a long shot. They looked like insects, like monstrous, mutated cockroaches, each the size of full-grown horses. But despite the chitinous shells and the segmented legs, they had a gruesome intelligence in their bulbous, multifaceted eyes. They clicked and chittered to each other, their segmented limbs twitching in a manner that suggested something akin to excitement. I thrashed uselessly, trying to scream, but my throat seemed paralyzed. It took a few moments for my terror-muddled brain to piece things together. I wasn't the meal. I was the specimen. AI, I croaked, my voice barely above a whisper. What the hell is this? The ship's AI had no comforting answer. It didn't speak at all. Instead, one of the insect creatures scuttled closer, mandibles clacking with unsettling anticipation. Its compound eyes glittered with a cold light that made my skin crawl. This is where I lose it, I thought. This is where I go insane and become another screaming space casualty. But something else snapped inside me instead. Not despair, but something else, something primal. Rage burned hotter than fear. With a roar, fueled by pure defiance, I ripped my arm free from the restraints. The creature closest to me recoiled with a startled hiss, and the others scrambled back. Surprise flickered across those horrifically intelligent eyes. I surged to my feet, the other restraints snapping under the force of my adrenaline-powered thrashing. This was the moment they'd underestimated. Sure, I was just a single human against a hive of alien horrors. But they'd forgotten one thing: if they wanted a specimen, they were going to have to fight to claim me. One of the creatures, emboldened or enraged, skittered forward. It was fast, blurring over the ground with terrifying speed, its segmented legs a whir of motion. But humans are apex predators for a reason, and desperation is one hell of a motivator. I sidestepped the charge, pivoting around as the creature shot past. With a grunt of effort, I grabbed one of the slimy protrusions jutting from the wall. It ripped free with a sickening squelch, and I swung it like a makeshift club. The creature shrieked as I smashed the slime-dripping growth across its head. It reeled, its armored shell cracking, and green ichor splattered across the floor. The others were charging now. I didn't hesitate. I flung my improvised weapon, catching one in the thorax and sending it tumbling, and then I was running. It was blind instinct guiding me, some animal part of my brain screaming for a way out. They were almost on me, the clicking of their claws on the fleshy floor a cacophony of terror. My eyes darted around frantically, landing on a narrow indentation in the wall. An opening? A passage. It was too small for them, too narrow, but perhaps. I lunged for it, shoving myself headfirst into the darkness, just as the creatures slammed into the wall behind me. There was the slithering sensation of flesh on flesh, then a feeling of weightlessness. I tumbled through the opening and fell painfully, landing hard on a smooth, sloping surface. It was a tube, slick and slimy. It twisted and curved downwards, the fetid smell of the chamber fading slowly as I plummeted into the depths of whatever hellish warren I'd landed in. I scrabbled for a hold, but there was nothing to grip. Fear gnawed at my guts anew. What if this was a chute leading straight into the stomach of that thing? Suddenly, there was a splash. Warm liquid soaked through my clothes, carrying the same rotten stink as everything else, but thankfully without the crushing pressure of a digestive chamber. When my vision cleared, I realized I was in a pool of the stuff, a stagnant, murky reservoir lined with the same throbbing flesh. It wasn't deep, barely reaching my waist, but it stank so badly I almost vomited again. Gagging, I splashed towards the edge, hauling myself out with a groan. There was still an opening in the wall, a smaller tunnel, barely wide enough for me to crawl through. Ignoring the revulsion, I scrambled in, not caring where the passage would lead me. Anywhere had to be better than here. A dim bioluminescence lit the tunnel ahead. I followed it, propelled by a mix of desperation and a dawning, foolhardy hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way out of this alien nightmare. What I found was the opposite of an escape. The passageway opened into another cavernous room, even vaster than the first. It was littered with bones, some looked uncannily human, others were of outlandish proportions unlike anything I'd ever encountered. But the horrifying centerpiece of the room was a heap of half-digested bodies, fleshy masses wrapped in shimmering membranes. From that squirming pile, more of the insect monstrosities were being born, their exoskeletons glistening wetly as they clawed their way into existence. A birthing chamber. I'd stumbled out of the frying pan right into the fire. The sight of those squirming, newborn abominations shattered something within me. I'd always prided myself on my cool under pressure, the unwavering logic in the face of the unknown. Yet here I was, trembling on the verge of collapse, utterly defeated. Every astronaut faces oblivion, but this? This was a monstrous mockery of anything natural. The rational part of my brain tried to fight back, to tell me they were just animals, just following instinct. But these weren't just animals. They were intelligent, cunning, and they had a whole spaceship under their thrall. No mere predator kept a specimen collection. It wasn't the fear that finally broke me. It was the loneliness. The crushing, absolute understanding that I might very well be the last human alive out here, that my entire species might be teetering on the brink of extinction somewhere out in that vast, uncaring cosmos. A sob tore itself from my throat. I stumbled to my knees, sinking my hands into the foul-smelling muck. I was going to die here, trapped in this alien hell. I pictured Earth, the blue marble hanging in the void, and a wave of despair crashed over me. All those people, all the lives I'd left behind. Gone. Wiped out by whatever these creatures were. My tears fell hot against my grimy cheeks. A part of me was relieved. I wouldn't have to face that horror anymore. At least my end would be swift, dissolved in some acidic pit inside an alien's gullet. The sound startled me out of my despairing trance. At first, I thought it was my own ragged sobs, but no. It was coming from the tunnel. Something was crawling towards me, its claws clicking an unsettling rhythm on the fleshy floor. I scrambled up, ready to fight again, even if it was hopeless. But what crawled out wasn't one of the insectoid horrors. It was tiny, no larger than a housecat. Furred, with 4 legs and big, curious eyes blinking in the dim light. It tilted its head at me, a questioning mew emerging from its throat. A dog. A completely ordinary Earth dog. My brain stuttered, unable to process what I was seeing. How the hell? My voice cracked, unused for so long. The dog bounded over, tail thumping against the ground with pure canine enthusiasm. It yipped and licked at my grime-covered hand, its warm tongue a jarringly normal sensation against my skin. Reality seemed to snap back into place. A dog wouldn't just be hanging out in the bowels of an alien spaceship. No way. Someone else had to be here, someone who'd brought the dog with them. A fellow astronaut, another survivor. The hope, faint but undeniable, flared up in my guts. I scooped the dog up, ignoring the stench of its fur. Come on, buddy, I whispered fiercely, let's go find your human. With newfound resolve, I turned and headed back the way I had come. I ignored the gurgling noises coming from the birthing chamber, the unsettling clicking of unseen insectoid creatures. There was a chance, however slim, and I refused to give it up without a fight. As we neared the chamber where I'd woken up, a new sound joined the symphony of the grotesque. A human voice, weak and hoarse, but unmistakable. Help! Someone! Please! A woman's voice. I broke into a run, the dog scrambling in my arms. Rounding a fleshy bend, I saw her. Another astronaut, bound to the platform with the same restraints I'd escaped from. Her eyes were wide with terror, focused on the tunnel opening above her head. Hang on, I shouted, I'm coming. She saw me, saw the dog, and a flicker of confused hope bloomed on her face. Before she could process what was happening, two of the insectoid creatures dropped from the passage above, mandibles snapping with predatory anticipation. Instinct and adrenaline took over. I barreled forward, roaring a wordless battle cry. The dog, sensing the danger, barked furiously, snapping at clawed legs as they reached for me. The fight was a chaotic blur of thrashing limbs, piercing shrieks, and the stench of fear. I swung my fists, boots thudding brutally against exoskeletons. I might have had weapons back in my pod, but out here, it was tooth and nail survival. One of the creatures scuttled around to attack the woman, but the dog darted between them, teeth bared in a feral snarl. The astronaut screamed as the other creature lunged. I saw it coming, saw the gleaming fangs poised to snap her neck. There was nothing I could do, no way to reach her in time. Then came the gunshot. The sharp crack echoed deafeningly through the chamber. The creature shrieked and collapsed in a splatter of green blood. Standing in the entrance of the passage, silhouetted against the eerie luminescence, was a figure in a spacesuit. Helmet visor down, weapon raised, they took another shot, blasting the creature that was menacing the dog. I was too stunned to speak. Who were they? How had they found this place? The other astronaut was sobbing, incoherent words tumbling from her ravaged throat. The figure strode towards us, movements measured and practiced. The dog yipped joyously and ran to greet them. As they neared, I noticed their suit was different, older. It had a worn look and was covered in strange sigils. The helmet's visor lifted, and my breath caught in my throat. A man, weathered, with grey-lined wrinkles and a determined set to his jaw, looked back at me. But his eyes gleamed with the same sickly green luminescence as everything else in this monstrous place. Easy, boy, he said to the dog, his voice eerily calm as the creature licked at his hands. You did good. He wasn't one of us. He was one of them. The ground seemed to tilt beneath me. The world narrowed down to that chillingly familiar green glow of his eyes. He'd been here the whole time, controlling the ship, leading me into this trap, the hunter playing with his quarry. The other astronaut wailed, her voice a thin thread of terror. No, please. He didn't even glance her way. His gaze was fixated on me, an unsettling curiosity gleaming in those inhuman eyes. Remarkable, he said, his voice low and smooth. Truly remarkable. I haven't seen such a spirited display of resistance in eons. His words felt oddly impersonal, like a scientist dissecting a particularly fascinating specimen. Which, I realized with mounting horror, was exactly what I was. Who are you? I forced out, my voice trembling. What do you want? He tilted his head, a slight, bird-like movement that was at once alien and disturbingly familiar. Ah. So many questions, he mused. But you are in no position for answers, specimen. The dog, the creature that had given me hope, rubbed against his leg and whined, tail thumping with unabashed affection. My blood ran cold. This thing, wearing a human skin, had fooled us both. We'd been played. You won't get away with this, I spat, clinging to the remains of my shredded defiance. Other humans will come. They'll find this place, they'll. He chuckled, the sound devoid of mirth. No. They won't. He reached out, and for an agonizing moment, I thought he would simply snap my neck. But instead, he ran a calloused hand across my grimy cheek. They will never find you, and your species, well, let's just say they won't be a problem for very much longer. Hope, the last sliver I'd clung to, died in my soul. My knees buckled, and he caught me, holding me up with an uncanny, deceptive strength. The woman's cries intensified. My eyes flickered toward her just in time to see one of the insectoid horrors scuttling towards her, renewed hunger in its eyes. I thrashed uselessly against his hold, my vision tunneling. Specimen, the man purred, his voice a chilling whisper against my ear. You will be the start of something glorious, I promise you that. Your resistance, it makes you all the more valuable. Now sleep. He pressed something cold and metallic against the base of my neck. Pain, sharp and bright, pierced me. Then the darkness swept up and swallowed me whole. I woke to a world in flames. The base was under attack. Explosions rocked the lunar surface, alarms screamed like a chorus of banshees. Fear, a hot, choking wave, washed over me, mingled with a jolt of adrenaline. I lurched up, the memories of that alien ship, the insectoid horrors, and the man with the glowing green eyes clawing their way back to the forefront of my mind. Harris. Someone barked my name. Captain Miller, my face drawn tight, eyes wild with battle frenzy. Forget your gear, there's no time. Grab a weapon and get your ass to the evac pods. We're pulling out, the whole damn place is overrun. Overrun? My voice croaked, barely audible over the din. By what? He didn't answer. Just thrust a rifle into my hands and yelled, move. The escape pod was like a sardine tin, crammed with terrified faces, streaked with grime and blood. As it blasted off, I looked back, staring at the burning wreckage of what was once our home amongst the stars. The lunar base, our outpost of humanity, was being consumed by a writhing mass of creatures I'd only seen in my worst nightmares. And leading the charge, a silhouette framed by firelight, was the human-shaped figure with those haunting, glowing eyes.